right, controlling
Yeah.
the narrative.
That's a good point.
So for us, what I mean by a narrative is each one of us, no matter what issue that we have in life, no matter what area of our life that we're discussing, we all have this internal narrative, this internal discussion that is going on in our heads. And when it comes down to real estate, and we're talking with either current clients, prospects, people that we just meet, we have to understand that there is a narrative in their head when it comes down to real estate, how they perceive the real estate market, and you have to understand that. And so for us, we have to be able to jump in, be able to control that narrative, flip that narrative, because with social media and the news and everything, people are getting fed information.
Negative.
It makes our job that much more difficult. So what is a narrative? Narrative is obviously a spoken or a written account of connective events. It is a story. There is a story in the minds of our buyers and our sellers and our prospects. Everybody has got this narrative going on when it really just comes down to real estate. And so it's how we contrast the world. So when we're talking about real estate, how do your people, how do your prospects, how do your past clients, how do your present clients, how do they see the world when it comes down to real estate? And I think for a lot of us, we don't take that time to really ask that question.
No, I always use a comment. There was a comment that was, again, taught to me years ago, and it's in order to allow someone to believe what it is that you'd like them to believe, what you're about to tell them, or you're going to regurgitate on them, you're going to do a presentation, whatever that may be. In order to position them to achieve that belief, you have to first put them in a position to achieve it all by themselves. So you never really tell them what to believe. You tell them all the things that might be necessary to lead them to come to that realization all by themselves. And once you do that, they own it.
So we refer to this, and when I say we, I completely ripped this off from another presentation, a conference I was at. So I'm not going to take credit for this. So, but there is this reality line, or this is their narrative, and you can see on the screen there's this line, and at some point there becomes a gap in the line, and that gap is where the narrative changes, and that gap is where we need to live. And that's where we need to infiltrate, and that's where we need to influence and get into that gap. And so when you think about the gap, what fills this gap? What is impacting and influencing that reality line, or that narrative of our consumers? Assumptions. Everybody's got assumptions about the market. Everybody's got assumptions of what's going to happen. What's going to happen with it? Are we going to have a market crash, and I'm going to lose my properties are going to go down? I don't know how many times I say, well, I don't want to buy a house because property values are going to drop. Okay, where'd you get that?
Yeah.
It's an assumption. Past experiences. I bought a house 5 or 6 years ago, or I bought a house in 2005 and the market crashed. And so now I have a past experience that is impacting, that's filling that gap, that is impacting that reality, that narrative line, the news, of course. When I hear, I just, it drives me nuts. What people just don't understand, that the news exists only if they can report doom and gloom. And we get frustrated with it. But if it wasn't true, then there would be no news, right? Social media obviously is filling that gap. And I'm saying all this because this is what we're up against. When we are talking with buyers and sellers and prospects and so forth, these are the things that are impacting their reality. This is who we're up against. And we don't necessarily always can win, but I think when you're going into a battle, you have to understand your opponent. You have to understand who's leading them, who's influencing them. And then family and friends, I think, for me, in the day-to-day, this is the big one. I deal with buyers and sellers whose parents lost a home, lost everything in the market crash in 2007 to 2009, and their parents are influencing and telling them, don't buy, don't buy, don't buy. Or they're talking with their friends who are making assumptions or based on past experiences or reading or watching, looking at social media and the news. And there's it's like that, the devil and the devil and the angel on the shoulder, and there are influences, and there's people that are just whispering into their ears, and they're filling the gap, and this is what we're up against.
Yeah, and the sad part is it's quantum. It's little itsy bitsy little pieces that are consistent over time that help fill what that narrative is. And so I always say, be careful who you pay attention to, because, and if you do, make sure that you have vetted that person that you're listening to, because everybody has an opinion. The fact is, not very few opinions are actually accurate.
Well, consumers don't know who to listen to and who not to listen to, and that's where the realtor needs to come in. And the one thing I just want to touch on is the news and social media, unfortunately, in 2023 is the same thing. I might be the last generation of people at 38 who sat around and watched the nightly news. That doesn't happen anymore, especially with someone who's going to be under 35. It doesn't exist. TV, as we know it, isn't the thing. So news is social media. They are the one in the same. So we're combating what they're seeing in front of their phones as they're scrolling every single morning, every single evening. That news is social media. So we've got to be the experts on what we are talking about, the truth that's happening in real estate, not the sensationalism.
So for me, and in how I interpret this and how I consume this is obviously I'm in the business of real estate, and that is my profession. And so every single person I come in contact with is a potential buyer, potential seller, potential investor, whatever the case is. I at least know going in that they already have this narrative in their head about the real estate market and what's going on in real estate. And I know these are the 5 big things that I'm up against.
Mike, that's a good point. Remember years ago, we talked about a new agent at a listing appointment, and that they're all nervous, their palms are sweaty, they want to have some kind of masterful presentation before they go. And they're all nervous about going. And we always said to somebody, no, don't worry about it. Go and just keep asking questions, and the consumer will tell you what the problems are, what their obstacles are, what they will come. If you ask enough questions of their narrative, it'll leave some clues for you as well.
Absolutely. And the reason that this happens, and this is the psychology part of it, and again, I'm not a psychologist and completely rip this off from somebody else, is our minds do not like gaps in reality. And you think about it, I last week I was on a cruise and to Alaska, and I'm a people watcher, and we're all people watchers. And when we see somebody walking, and depending on how they're dressed or whatever they're doing and so forth, our mind, we start judging, and our mind, we start making assumptions. We start filling the gap. We start changing that. We totally develop this entire narrative based on these 5 things and so forth. And it's like that about everything. We just do that. Our brains cannot handle gaps in reality. And where there is a gap, we will fill it with something. And if we don't fill the gaps, and this is now where it's getting down to our rule, if we don't fill those gaps with the truth and the knowledge and the numbers and our expertise as real estate professionals, something or someone else will, if they haven't already done so.
Yeah, that's so smart. I loved how you said that we start prejudging, even though we all believe we don't judge, we all prejudge. Have you ever been on the phone with someone and you're talking to them, and you're kind of trying to, without even thinking about it, your mind's trying to decide or build this avatar of who this person is, and you listen to them, and then when you finally get to meet them, you're like, oh my gosh, that doesn't look like the person that I had in my head that person was going to look like. Maybe it might have been someone who was heavier or lighter or taller or smaller, or whatever, but yet we've all done that. Every single person has done that. You pick up the phone, you're talking to somebody you think or you listen to a radio talk host and you think you know who the person is, then you see them in real life, or you see a picture of them and you're like, wow, I wouldn't have thought that at all.
Yeah, I'm constantly told I sound taller.
That's funny.
Well, I was going to leave. That was going to be my next
Yeah,
thing.
no, I couldn't let you say it. I had to say it first.
You beat
Yeah.
me to the point. But how many times have we seen someone and we've already prejudged them and said, oh, I don't like this person. I'm not going to like this person. I'm not going to want to spend time with them. And then we get to know them and we're like, oh my gosh, this person's amazing and so forth. Well, this is what's happening with our people when it comes down to real estate. They're coming to the table with these influences on that narrative. So I want to talk about ChatGPT for a second. I think that we are, depending on the industry that you're in, there's a lot of people that are concerned about ChatGPT putting them out of business. I think for us as real estate agents, if I see another person pop up who's now offering a ChatGPT class, I'm gonna smack myself because everybody's now jumping on this. I think it's a trap for us. I think that ChatGPT now is making us even more lazy, and because social media to me, and Nick, you hit it, you kind of mentioned it or alluded to it earlier. It's not as effective as it can be, but for most agents, it's not as effective. It's become lazy. I post something on social media. I pat myself on the shoulder and said, "Hey, man, I marketed today, and I did something today." And so I think a lot of times social media's made us lazy. I think texting has made us lazy because in the old days when we couldn't text, we had to pick up the phone and call people. And so I think a lot of technology is truly making us making us lazy because it's so easy. And so now we got ChatGPT coming in, and now they're writing all of our content. And now they're writing all of our social media content and all of our blogs and all of our emails and things like that. What you have to understand about for AI, to me, it's content only. That's all it is. It cannot replace a true real estate conversation. No. AI can't do it. We've been on websites where we hop on the chat bot and you try to explain your problem and so forth, and you can tell the difference between AI and someone who's actually on the other end listening or reading what I'm saying. It cannot replace real estate conversations. We have to be able to do that. And ChatGPT, it's not a lead source.
Well, talk about controlling the narrative. Go into ChatGPT and ask it to send a text about real estate and then read it out loud. It sounds like a robot. Yep. When you take English 101, they teach you about voice. The way you write is specific to you. The way people are going to read something, that's in their voice. But if you are writing it and you're a human being writing it, you're going to be able to add inflections and conversation and words that help that person read it a little bit the way you would be writing it. ChatGPT is a robot talking as a robot. So it is very clear, hey, when you use ChatGPT to post or to send an email or to send a text, we know.
And so what it can't do, and this is what I want to hit on, it can't talk for us. So we should not use it to talk for us. Okay, it can't take my tone. It can't express what I need to express, and it can't humanize. When we're talking about people who've got these narratives and these influences, you have to be able to humanize with them. ChatGPT is not a human. Is it going to get there? I don't know if it's going to ever be able to humanize, but I can tell right now it can't humanize. So it can't replace our conversations, and it can't. And we're going to talk about this. It can't tell your story. Right. And it can't tell the stories of the people that you've helped. So we always talk about, and on our team, we'd always talk about storify your pitch. It can write better, but it can't deliver.
There's logic and there's emotion. And really, those are the two sides of every equation. The logic is maybe the numbers, maybe the finances, maybe is this a 4-bedroom home? I need 4 bedrooms, the logic behind it. The emotion is the things that really are the triggers that really make people make the decision finally to say, oh, I like this house over that one better, or things of this nature. So look at ChatGPT or anything from that perspective as logic only. Mm-hmm. So when you're listening and all you're hearing are the numbers, if a consumer said, I really like blue better than yellow, ChatGPT is going to pop back, and it's not going to be about color. It's going to be, yes, but the yellow house has, financially, blah, 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 blah. This is the reason why it's better. So it's always going to default to logic, never to emotion. And that's really, I think, a key indicator. I got a text the other day from somebody, it used to be just people trying to buy my investment houses. Now it's like trying to buy my primary residence as well. And it said, I'm a real person,
Yeah.
you know, and I'm like, that's my first clue. It was AI.
Yeah, I was thinking about
Wasn't a real
I was
person.
thinking about on our website, opening up our website on the homepage saying nothing in here was created by AI.
Yeah,
We're
there you
like we're real.
Yep.
We're real agents. We're real people. We can
I
humanize
like that.
with you. So now going back to what we better be able to do now is, because ChatGPT is a force, and it's doing what it's doing, and with technology, I think the four things that we as agents need to be able to do more than we ever had to do. One, we have to learn how to talk. We have to learn how to talk to people. What I mean by that, Todd, is we have to be able to sit down face to face with somebody and actually have a real estate conversation with them. We have to be able to explain what's going on in the market. We have to be able to explain what that process is. We have to be able to tell our stories. I think this is so I have a story for everything. And that's one of the benefits of being on the team is I don't have a personal story of in my life or one of my clients. I've got 25 agents on my team. I can lean on one of their stories. Every single pitch that you do when you're talking about real estate with people, it has to include a story. How did you help so and so? If I'm talking with a first-time home buyer, I've got stories for that. I've got people relocating from different states or buying sight unseen. I've got stories for that. If I'm talking with somebody who's in the military, I got tons of stories on that. People pay attention to stories. That's why for those that go to church, that's why every sermon includes stories and stories and stories, because one, we pay attention, two, we can relate. Mm-hmm. The third thing that we need to be able to do is articulate, and this is what ChatGPT can't do. We have to be able to articulate what we do. Todd, what do we do? I mean, what I'm saying, I'm not asking you, right, but what do we do as a buyer's agent? Or what do we do as a listing agent? Most sellers have no idea what we do. They think that we're grossly overpaid. Can you articulate what you do? I take every seller through all my step-by-step negotiating process from A to Z, which is pretty extensive. I do the same thing with my buyers. When you hire me to represent you on the buy side, this is how I'm going to negotiate. These are my strategies. This is the information that I'm going to gather and put together before we ever consider making an offer. And most of the time, people are like, okay, wow, I had no idea. You have to be able to articulate what you do rather than just say, I'm a realtor.
Yeah, I'm really just going to leave that one just as you just said it, because honestly, that's a key to this business, is being able to do that.
And these are the ways, and going to the fourth point here is we need to be able to influence and then change that narrative.
That's the key.
And learning how to be able to talk. Yep. I tell my team all the time, if you don't feel comfortable talking, go do a Toastmasters class. Yep. I was at a conference a couple of weeks ago. Well, same conference I ripped all this information from. And I was talking with a lady. She was in the title world, and she was terrified to talk with people, just terrified. Wow. And she was just really struggling. And so her boss, their company, sent her to Chicago for a week for a improv class. Could you imagine if you were terrified to speak to people of having to do improv? Yeah. And now she's
stand up and be funny.
Now she goes, the best thing that I ever did. She goes, I learned how to talk to people. Yeah. And so you got to learn how to talk. That this is what's going to influence and change that narrative. Stories will change that narrative. Being able to articulate what we do. People ask me all the time, "Oh man, how's the market?" The market's incredible. I'm working with 3 investors right now. Really? Now all of a sudden, I'm filling that gap. I'm now influencing that narrative through my stories and being able to articulate what we do. Be able to articulate why we're buying, why I'm still investing in real estate, and so forth. So your pitch. You gotta, when somebody asks you what you do for a living, you gotta be able to answer that question. We always joke, if you say you're a realtor, everybody's gonna run and so forth. But really, when you're talking with people, who are you? Who am I? Am I, as a real estate professional, as a realtor? Can you articulate who you are? What do you do? How do you help people? That is the key. That's how you change the narrative. I help people. For us, it's build a legacy of wealth through real estate. But how do you help people? What makes you unique? You have to be able to answer that question when somebody asks you what you do for a living, or you're having this opportunity to tell people what you do for a living.
I think sitting down and having this conversation with yourself, working with other people around you, you need to be able to articulate this, as you said it before. Being able to speak in public and having these answers at the tip of your tongue is important, because that first 15 seconds of that conversation is what changes the narrative. If someone asks you how the real estate market is, and you're like, oh, it's so hard. I just had a buyer that fell out. I wasn't able to get it closed. What are you doing? Like, you're obviously putting a negative perspective into, and I hear this. I hear agents have these conversations and they're doing it with each other. And what you're saying out there is making it real in your universe. You need to have perspective. You need to have positivity. And having that, building that confidence comes with being able to have this conversation very quickly.
I think one of the best things that agents can do is get together with other agents and do a call event.
Yeah.
Listen to how other people work the phones and have conversations. Let them listen to you. I try as much as I can on every Thursday morning with my team. I invite whoever for my team and anyone who's listening to this podcast if they want to come and listen to it. But I Thursday mornings are prospecting time for me, and they're able to come and listen to me make my calls and so forth. I get to listen to make their calls, and those newer agents, it's rough.
Yeah.
It's rough, but they're learning how to talk.
It's reps. You have to do reps. You're not going to be good at something the first time you do it.
All right. So back to your story. You've got to share your story. If you don't share your story, they're going to share their story, or the stories that they've heard, or there's those other stories that they're listening to are influencing that narrative. So personal real estate experience, client experience, team experience, you gotta come up with your stories. No matter the situation, no matter the conversation you're having with someone, you have to have a story. And if you're new to the business and you don't have a lot of stories, that's why you need to be at team meetings. You need to be at happy hours. Going back to your 12-pack earlier today.
That's as many pack as I have apps.
So I love this. This is one of my favorite quotes. Those who tell the stories rule society. I can't tell you how effective my sales skills have become, because everything it's like a slot machine. When I'm having a conversation with someone and I'm listening to their pain points and I'm listening to where they're at, these stories just go round and round in my head until something just stops. I'm like, this is the story. But from Plato, those who tell the stories rule society. Tell the story. So flipping the narrative, just in wrap up, know that source of the gap, know what's influencing them. In order to do so, you have to ask the right questions. Okay, let them talk 70 to 80% of the time, and then jump the narrative. I love this. I like to be the first in. Sometimes I won't even let them ask the questions. I'll get right, because I know what they're concerned about. They're concerned about interest rates. They're concerned about the market crash. So I'll just jump right in and talk about how great the real estate market is, how high interest rates are giving buyers the best opportunity and the best deals on the house. Again, articulate what you can do. Can you articulate what you do as a listing agent and a buyer's agent? Obviously, know your stuff. That's why, know how to overcome objections, and again, storify your pitch. So that's what I got.
Boom.
Yep. Love it.
All right. Thanks, guys. For,
you recapped. There you go.
Yeah. All right. All right. So we leave everybody with the quote of the day. Be miserable. That's it, folks. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, we got to reframe this.
Be miserable or motivate yourself. Whatever has to be done, it's always your choice. Appreciate everybody joining us today. Go out and sell a home.